Welcome to the Mindset Mirror Connection podcast. In today's episode, we're going to talk about the dysfunctional eating patterns that stem from your childhood. Yes, if you haven't figured it out already, a lot of the reasons we struggle with food stems from what we learned at an early age. So if you're ready, listen up and lean in as we elevate your mind. Your parents fucked you up.
Clap. Yeah, I mean, I've definitely got some of these, or I still do, not as much. Did you have any of this?
I did not. Well, no, I did ish. So my mom, unfortunately, grew up in a household where you had to clean your plate. And if you didn't clean your plate, my grandfather would give you more food and would sit there with you until you finished everything.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So she was a little bit more lenient with us because she was like, yeah, I'm not going to do that. Also, my mom made me different meals than everyone else because I did not eat like everyone else.
Okay.
So like I didn't love, like if she made tacos, I wanted to have like a burrito bowl. So she would make me my burrito bowl. I mean, she didn't like make me a totally different meal, of course, but she definitely listened and allowed me to ask for my wants and needs to be met when it came to food. Feeding people is my mom's love language. So there is that part of pushing food on you or pushing her food on you. She still does this when we go out to dinner or breakfast. We usually do breakfast. She'll be like, I'm like, oh, how's your omelet? She'll be like, good. Do you want some? And I haven't eaten, you didn't eat very much. Or are you still hungry? And I'm like, no, I'm done eating. I have very strong boundaries around food. But no, I don't have a lot of these, but I see them all of the time. We touched on them in one of our last episodes. So I think it's a really important thing to realize because you can be like, oh, you're right. When I, see food on the table, I have to eat it because I was forced to eat all of my food.
Well, and it becomes like it's more of an automatic reaction too.
Yeah. Oh, I agree. It really is. And so this will be really helpful for you guys because once you can be aware of it, obviously when we create awareness and we're not just doing things subconsciously, that is when we can create change. But if we're just doing it and just, this is who I am, this is what I've always done, then we're just going to always continue to do it. And so that is why I thought this would be a good conversation. Did you have these? Which ones did you struggle with?
Clean Plate Club for sure. And then probably finish it. I think the Clean Plate Club kind of goes into the finishing food when full too, right? Because if we're cleaning our plate, we're not really listening to our hunger signals. It's interesting. I have like the food, like, I used to have like I don't want to say a hoarding tendency, but a hoarding tendency of cookies because of the scarcity. Like I couldn't have it, but if I freeze it, I could have it later. And so it would be there, but I never ended up eating it. That was a weird one that I was like, I don't need to do this. And I think that was probably about it. Label food is bad for sure, actually.
Oh yeah. Okay. Again, I can see myself where this came from, but it was not my parents. It was more dance, and like labeling foods as good and bad. Yeah. What was going to make you fat, what wasn't. And then when my mom found out that I was trying to manipulate my diet, she and my dance teacher had a very long talk with me, and I was told I would not dance again if I ever tried to manipulate my food. Then I grew into an adult and was like, fuck you guys, you can't tell me what to do. I will manipulate all I want.
And then here we are.
And here we are teaching you how to not do this. So let's just define dysfunctional eating patterns. So they're these unhealthy behaviors, of course, and your attitude towards food. Now, they're not always unhealthy per se, because I have had conversations with people where they did finish their meal and they felt perfectly fine afterwards. Right. But we'll talk about where it becomes at the expense of self. And we're eating and how you're eating obviously has negatively impacted your physical and emotional well-being, right? And so as children, you may not have realized that this was affecting you in such a negative way. But now as an adult, you can see like, oh, I literally clean my kids' plates every time they eat. Right. I don't track it, of course, because it's so hard to track. And those extra goldfish, hot dog, and animal crackers they have calories. Weird. I know they have calories in them.
Yeah.
And, you've got to figure out how to stop these behaviors.
Yeah. Well, and I think
So,
it's important, like we were saying, it's important to recognize where they come from. So we're probably going to talk a lot about moms, and I think that's just because of our mom's generation and culture. We're growing up around certain things and beliefs that imprinted on us. But it doesn't have to become specifically from moms. I've had it from dads for some of my clients, siblings for some of my clients, grandparents for some of my clients. So it's finding
dance
out
culture,
yeah, coaches actually too,
mhm,
so
big time.
it's more so of what parental role, or I don't want to say authoritative figure, but adult figure that was mostly consistently present in your life. It's
Mhm.
they're sending you a message, and you as a child is interpreting that message. And then those message goes into self-worth, your values, your body image, and how you perceive food. And
Right.
so then that becomes a unconscious thing that we believe in adulthood, because it's funny when we have clients go through the method, they'll talk about these things and they'll be like, it's funny when I say that out loud and text it to you. And I'm like, I mean, yeah, but you believe it pretty firmly because it keeps happening. So let's work on
Right.
that. So,
Right. That's such a good point of like how firmly people will believe like this is just who I am, like
right.
this is just what I do. And again, bringing that awareness helps you understand why you're struggling with this in adulthood. We want you to leave this episode being able to identify what the messages were sent to you, understand the importance of these messages, and how they've developed your own issues with your body,
Yeah.
with eating patterns, with that self-worth voice, because they all like to play well in the sand together. So we have this dysfunctional eating relationship.
Mhm.
Then we hate our bodies because of it. And then our inner critic gets louder and is like, well, you shouldn't do X, Y, and Z. But you keep coming back to the dysfunctional eating patterns, even if you try real hard for
Right.
a couple of weeks to get out of them, because you're not aware of when they're happening.
Right.
You're trying to change something that's not the thing that needs to be changed, which is the food.
Right.
You gotta eat,
And
right? And
this
so,
episode is going to be important for everybody to listen to, but I almost want to say more so for parents too,
mhm,
because and I think this is coming from like my population that I primarily work with. So if you don't know, I primarily work with our fertility, prenatal, and postpartum clients.
mhm,
And what I hear from them is, I don't want my kids to think and behave around food like I do. And my
mhm.
rebuttal to that is, how can you teach them when you haven't given yourself the education? Right.
Absolutely.
So we need to,
Intergenerational trauma is you
yeah,
got
yeah.
intergenerational food dysfunction.
Right. So you probably are going to try so hard not to pass that on to them with the best intentions. And I firmly believe that, but you don't know how not to, because you're still doing it. And
Absolutely.
as we know, children see behaviors, they repeat behaviors.
Mhm,
One thing I also want to recognize too is that when we're talking about this, is that it's not to shame your parents or caregivers or coaches or grandparents by any means. Like, this is not, I'm going to haterade on them. And
mhm.
it's really, like I said,
Sorry.
it's literally to
Mhm.
say, like, they had their own shit too, right? And they didn't realize, because now we're all in this therapy era, that impacts those around you, whether it's consciously or unconsciously. So it's not
Yes.
meant for blaming or anything like that, but it's just
Don't
for
call
you.
mom.
Yeah, yeah, don't. Because
Don't
I
call
actually,
mom.
it's funny, I had a client who, and she didn't call mom, but she was like, once she kind of figured it out, put two and two together, she was like very pissed off at her mom. And it was kind of like, we had to talk about, like, don't you think your mom was trying the best, like, that she was doing at the time, given the skills that she
Right.
had? And now here you have the opportunity, you're aware of it, that you can talk to her about it without blaming and shaming, and just being like, oh, it was interesting because I realized from childhood, this were some things that I did, and that this is how it impacts my adulthood. So it's really
Mhm.
just to bring awareness too. So we need
Yes,
to
absolutely.
still treat these people as if, I hope you love them and that you care for them, and not, it's not to, like, because I think sometimes what people like to do is keep cracking the egg on the trauma part of this, of like, well,
Mhm.
they did that. And it's like, okay, well, now we know. So let's move forward and, change
You're
your
the only one
behavior.
who can change it.
Yes.
Exactly. And, we talk a lot about even the interactions with parents or lack thereof, how we were
Mhm.
seen and heard, but these are actual like concrete behaviors with food. So
Yes.
that is the biggest difference here. And some examples, and I want you guys, if you write this down, put it in a note in your phone to think about what this looked like in your home. So the biggest one we see is, as you talked about, the clean plate
Mhm.
club. You've got to clean your plate. And we often see this in families who have, um, you know, parents who don't have an understanding of their hunger and fullness cues, right? We're seeing everyone else clean our plate, or we get comments about cleaning our plate. Again, my grandfather would literally make everyone sit there until they were done.
Ugh.
And this goes with the other one, finishing food even when full. I mean, I've seen my nieces and nephews eat a couple of bites of like butter noodles, like, I'm full. What we need to remember, guys, is for any of you who have had children, we are born with the ability to recognize our hunger and fullness cues.
Correct.
Babies cry when they want food and they turn their head when they're done.
Yes.
So when our parents then put, or adult figures put these ramifications or boundaries or expectations on our food, we change the ability to listen to our bodies, and we're listening to everyone else and looking for everyone else on what we should do with this thing that is there to nourish us, and that we innately have the ability to feel when we need it and when we're done with it. So just put that out there. My mom did do this. She did have, we talked about this the other day, healthy foods that were mom's, like
Yeah.
Snackwell cookies were her thing.
Jenny Craig.
Yes.
First.
Weight Watchers,
Fun
absolutely.
fast.
And we were not allowed to have any of those. Those are
Yeah.
mom's and dad's food. My mom would always have my dad do it too. We didn't have a lot of this. My parents, both of us grew up with parents in the restaurant industry. My parents owned a restaurant, and it was a cafeteria style.
Uh-huh.
So they had chips, and I mean, at our house, we had like Snickers bars and just stuff because they were going to expire. So they would just bring them home, And so I didn't have this, but I also remember going to my friend Julie's house, and they had like a lot of snacks.
Really?
Like we would have them here and there. My parents every single night would do their walk to the store and buy us a snack. So like we weren't deprived of foods, but a lot of people are deprived of pleasurable foods as children. And I just remember going to Julie's house and being like, look at all these snacks.
You know,
I want
it's
to eat all
funny.
the snacks.
So, okay. So I had to have ice cream every night. So that's honestly like my mom, we'd have cookies in the house, but I never really was a big candy person. So that made it easy and whatnot. So like, it's not that we didn't have a lot of pleasurable foods. It's just that we didn't tend to eat a lot of pleasurable foods.
Yeah.
Then you got homeboy over here, and he talks about his childhood upbringing. And I'm like, dear fucking God. So his mom loves to go by the store, and she'll get whatever. Like if you're like, oh, that looks good, she'll be like, oh, we should get it. And she'll get like 5 boxes of it. And then it's, oh, that looks good. She'll get 5. So his parents, from what I understand, were very busy working throughout his childhood. And so he was left to his own devices. And if I'm talking about my significant other, for those of you who are like, who the fuck
homeboy is?
Yeah.
Who's homeboy?
Yeah. Homeboy. AKA lover. So he would just go hard every day after school and have like the Fruit Loops, the Gushers, everything, because it was all available to him, and there was no moderation either. So then you have the other end, right? So some restriction where you're not that you experience that, but you go over, like some parents literally like, no, we don't have that in the house. And to me, I'm like, we can't not have anything in the house that's pleasurable. Like,
right.
That's because then if and when the kid goes out, they're like, oh shit, but then we also don't need a whole pantry of all the pleasurable food with a kid left unattended, because they're going to make the choice that they want to make, which is rightfully so.
Right. You make me think of something my mom said, like even before I was born. She said with my brother, she ate all the snacky foods, and my brother loves snacky foods. And with me, she ate all the healthy foods. I generally seek comfort from things like pineapple, strawberries. Yeah. I would get a block of, like, I would cut, you buy those block of cheese, and I just cut one, and like that would be my snack. And this was natural for me. Yeah. I would have like treats. Like I said, I loved a good Choco Taco. Let's go. Have you ever had a Choco Taco?
What a chocolate taco is.
What? Choco Tacos, baby. That's what I got from the little store. Choco Tacos are like those really sour.
Oh, like a
Yeah.
what is this? It's like a
It's a
waffle
taco.
with ice cream and
Mhm. Or I'd get a drumstick. Loved
yeah.
a drumstick.
I would say a chocolate taco is a
Or I'd
drumstick.
get like sour like licorice. That was also my thing. I love sour licorice so
Yeah.
much. I would do Chips Ahoy's and put peanut butter on them. That was another yummy thing I would eat. And now I realize I'm sensitive to peanuts. Yay. But because my mom ate a certain way, even in utero,
Yeah.
she does believe, she was like, it's
Well,
night and day with the two of you.
honestly, there are studies that show that how you eat with your child beforehand, or so how you eat during fertility or preconception, and then how you eat during the pregnancy impacts the child's kind of food preferences
Mhm.
long term, and then as well with breastfeeding, and as well as like within the household too. So
Yep.
we know the household part, but there is actually studies to support your mother.
Yes, I was a weirdo who they're like, where do you want to go for dinner for your birthday? I'm like, Sizzler. I want to go to the salad bar.
Ooh,
Always, always, baby.
I was a
The other
Taco
thing
Bell.
though, so if that was a parent who, I do love Taco Bell.
Yeah.
If I was a parent who then glorified that, right?
Yes.
Oh, you're such a good eater. Look at how you're good eating. Look how healthy you eat. If my mom, she never said anything about it until later. But if she would have glorified me eating the healthy foods and, oh, you're so good, you're a good eater, then I would have been like, oh, I get praise for eating these types of foods. They're good. I don't get praise when I eat my cookies with peanut butter on them. Those must be bad, right? And then, we talked about it too, just having a lot of processed foods. I think of parents who are on the go, kids are on the go. And again, if you're on the go and you have to pick up your dinner from, Taco Bell, for example, your parents are just trying to feed your ass, right? They don't have time to make you a full-blown meal. I remember when I was at dance, because I was there so long, my parents halfway through the night would have to bring me food. And oftentimes it was a bag from McDonald's.
Right.
Sometimes it would just be like something to heat up, or they would just bring it straight from home. And because we didn't live very far from my dance studio. Well, one that's really hard is food scarcity.
Yes.
So this could be a family where you have just a big family and like we only have so much food. And if you don't eat, someone else will eat it. Or we don't have the means to buy food. So food becomes scarce. And that can be very different. It can be very traumatizing because obviously we have to eat. And so when you have food scarcity for either reason, when you do get food, you're going to eat it. And then it becomes a conditioned response that when food is presented in front of me, I eat the food.
Right. That one is for me always hard to coach because it's not based on, how do I put this? It's not solely based on communication of what food is, but it's based on sometimes like financial access. And so not only are we talking about the communication of food, but we're also talking about at this point financially, we might be in a different position. And that's sometimes hard to recognize because now sometimes financially there's that like scarcity mindset too. So then we're penny pinching and like getting the cheapest quality food when maybe we don't need to be getting the cheapest quality food because it's impacting our health, or the processed food. Like you're not seeing that the $5 McDonald's meal actually long-term is not as beneficial as maybe the $8 burger with the bun that you could get 4 patties out of and something like that.
Right.
So that one's always challenging for me to coach through of just because there like any of these, there's a lot of layers, but that one tends to be more of the financial aspect is so unwebbed.
And it also kind of plays into like the clean plate, but it's the don't waste club.
Don't waste. Yes.
Yeah. Where if there's leftovers from the meal out that you ordered in, you're like, well, I don't want to throw all this food away, rather than thinking, okay, well, I won't. I'll eat it tomorrow. And then tomorrow you're like, the blooming onion doesn't taste good. No. Yeah. The other one, though, is when you break up McDonald's is like when you Pizza Hut did it where you read so many books and then you got like a personal pan pizza. Or,
Oh, wow.
See, there's people listening. They're like, fuck yeah. I remember that. You $5. You had like this whole thing and your parents had to like put
Sign off on
stickers or
it?
something off of it. Yeah. And then we'd go to Pizza Hut and have my little personal
Golly.
pizza, and I got rewarded for reading with food.
Yeah.
Or you always went through, I mean, again, I always say it's called a Happy Meal for a reason. We're not buying it when, well, maybe sometimes they're buying it when you're sad, but you did something good. You got straight A's. So you went and got a Happy Meal, right?
Yeah.
And you got a toy. So that food as a reward, or as we've talked on here, is I see it all the time. Like, do you want a treat? I've seen this in calls with clients.
Yes.
Where the kid's freaking out in the background. She's like, do you want the popsicle? And I'm like, no.
Yes.
Do not do that, because it's saying I am dysregulated in my body. And guess what? I pop in my mouth.
Right.
A
Or this
popsicle
is where
regulate.
I had a stressful day. I'm going to go get XYZ.
Correct.
Exactly where
I
I successfully got through the day. Food is my reward for getting through the day. And it's like, nope.
Yep. You may also saw like a parent or a sibling just pick from everyone's plates.
Yeah.
Like, I have not shared this on the podcast. We actually had 2 of my brother's best friends live with us. 2.
I remember that.
Yeah. Okay, good. And one of them was kind of the trash can. Like, he ate all of the food, right?
Yeah.
So I imagine as he's gotten older, and I know he's gained some weight, like that, trash can mentality has continued with him. Now, it was kind of, this is another one we didn't put on here, but usually this is with boys than girls, is like that kid that can kind of just keep eating and they just don't get full. And then people are like, look at him, look how much he can eat. And they're like, yeah, look at me, until, they have a heart blockage and, and they have to get a stent. And so picking off other people's plates or cleaning the table for everybody, right? We see this a lot with moms where they just pop that thing in their mouth and they're so not aware of it.
Right.
They're so unaware that they just did that. It's so unconscious. And then I think of this from like, usually families in different cultures, the large portions.
Yep.
Like, if you came to my mom's house 10 years ago, you'd be like, is she expecting 50 people? No, there's 7 of us coming. And she would just make all of these dishes. And then she'd want you to send you home with them. And I'd always be like, no, I didn't even eat any of them when I'm here, because my stomach is only so big. And she would want you to take home there was a dessert table plus like a spread of food. The dessert table would have like 8 things on it. Then she'd also make like 12 dishes. And I'm just like, I just ate what I ate. Like, I've always just been kind of stubborn.
Like, this is a little unnecessary.
Oh, I told her, I go, you're only allowed 10 plates. That includes dessert. So we only do 10 plates now.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then last one, of course, like eating and on the go, like we talked about. So not sitting down, not having that moment with your food, like sometimes not even tasting the food,
right?
Because you're just in a hurry. And that, of course, is going to create a mindless relationship with food where we just scarf it in our mouths. We don't give our brains an opportunity to catch up with our bellies and our physical hunger or fullness. And that's going to create a disconnect from that as we go into adulthood.
Well, yeah, even if you're not rushing to go somewhere, sometimes this is like with the larger families of like, this is all the food that we have. So you're trying to get as much as you can for your portion, and you're going to eat it all because God forbid you left it on your plate, because there's probably some shame around that of like, what the fuck? I would have ate it if you hadn't taken so much. Right. So there's that too. And so we're not regulating our hormone, but not our hormone, but like our hunger system. So that makes it challenging for that. You'll see that, like you said, a lot with larger families.
Yeah. And so, I want you guys to be thinking about like, what was it like in my household? Because I'm sure most of us can relate to one of these, and then starting to think about like, okay, what does this look like now? Again, we gave you some examples of that, because as we go through this podcast and giving you ways to handle this, it's going to be specific to that behavior.
Yeah. And
then also thinking about, okay, how can I recreate this in my own family of origin, which we'll talk about as well. But awareness, first and foremost, is key. When we can realize, oh, I do that thing.
Right.
I do clean my plate, or I eat food simply because it's in front of me because I had 12 siblings. That is going to be number one in how to change this, right? Yes. So thinking about which ones you identify with, and then of course, how did this manifest, or what does it look like now? in adulthood is so important.
Well, and even so, we're talking about the awareness of these kind of behaviors and examples. So, for example, I could say the clean plate club and then finishing food when I'm full is kind of a 2-in-1 for me, for example. It doesn't mean I have to conquer both either,
Mhm.
because I think that's like what a lot of people do is like, okay, now I know, so I'm going to fix all of the things. And it's more so of, yeah, we just need to know, right? And then
Mhm.
I'm going to fix one thing. So let's take the clean plate club and finishing even when full. So maybe on purpose, and this is actually what I did to help with it. When I would get my plate, I would say, okay, I'm going to literally leave 2 bites on the plate. Just
Mhm.
2, it wasn't like I'm going to leave half or I'm going to do something like that. And it
Nothing
was,
drastic.
yeah. And I wasn't focused more so on like, what are my hunger levels at that point? Because I need to just be aware of like leaving the 2 on the plate and dealing with that emotional management was enough.
Right.
So yeah. And then like scraping it in the trash, it was like, oh, like I could put those 2 bites in my eggs tomorrow or something like that.
Right.
So that's how I would say, one, bring an awareness, write these down, which ones you do, but then just choose one to focus on. And
And
so then,
challenge.
okay, once I can leave the 2 plates, now let's actually focus on my hunger signal, because I think leaving 2 bites, excuse me, is a lot easier than trying to connect to your body, especially as women, right? Like it's very hard for
Mhm.
us to eat intuitively, as they say, and to connect to our body because we've been so disassociated from it. So now I know I'm going to leave my 2 bites, but how do I feel leading up to those 2 bites?
Mhm.
When I'm halfway done, we'll say a steak, for example, when I'm halfway done with that steak, am I 50% hungry? Am I 40% hungry? Am I 60% full? Okay. So if I'm halfway done with my steak and I feel 80% full, then maybe I need to leave more than 2 bites. And then I could
Mhm.
consider, maybe I'll save half the steak, right?
Right.
Or something
For the
like that.
next
So
day.
just kind of walking through one thing at a time.
Mhm.
It's going to be more, you're going to provide more opportunities for success than trying to do all the things at once.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The other one, like I hear people like, I just don't have these foods in my house. That's an
Yes.
overcorrection.
Right.
And you are not getting to the root cause of the
Mhm.
problem.
You're
You're
avoiding.
just avoiding it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so bringing pleasurable foods into your home is important, especially if you have kids, because we don't want to be the home that only glorifies certain foods
Right.
and restricts others, which is giving that good bad mentality, that message. But what do we do? So I have a client who struggles with binge eating, and she, for the foods that are, she also struggles with scarcity mindset. She, for seasonal treats from Trader Joe's, y'all know what they are. She will bag them up into servings. And she literally told me the other day, she goes, it's insane, Christina. She goes, simply because they're in the serving size, I don't need them as much.
Yeah.
It was the ability to use it as an excuse to be out of control.
Uh-huh.
But now that it's controlled, I don't even want them. I don't
Well,
even want
this
them.
is one of my favorite hacks that we do, and is like, okay, so for example, we'll take me for example. I can't have Oreos in the house because I'll just eat the whole package. And it's like, well, guess what you get to do every fucking day is have an Oreo.
Have a
And
fucking
we're
Oreo.
gonna eat
Maybe
it.
two.
Yeah,
Maybe one after lunch,
yeah,
one after dinner.
we're gonna eat it really slow, and you're gonna sit there with your Oreo. And after a while, you're gonna be like, oh God, I don't want my Oreo today. Like it
Yeah.
takes away, because when we take the food out of the house and because we're probably taking a treat out of the house, right? Like a less nutrient dense thing. Let's be honest. It's not going to be broccoli or sweet potatoes.
No.
Like, so it's going to be something tasteful.
Mhm.
You're now putting it on a pedestal. So, and labeling it as the good and bad, right? And
Right.
then that label becomes you. So I am bad because I had the Oreo. So then when I go to a party that has Oreos, and I really like them, then I know like, oh, I never have Oreos. Like I'll just have one. And then I have 2. And then I have 3 because I know I don't
Also
have
have a
it at
scarcity
home.
mindset.
Yeah. So see where everything's starting to wrap up into one of these kind of behaviors that we're talking about in these patterns is, so now I'm going to have more Oreos than I normally would. And then I'm also going to feel guilty about it and probably do an overcorrection thing that we've talked about in other episodes. So
Mhm.
I tell clients, like, for example, one of my clients, she loves these, like, I guess this season is caramel apple season, and she loves the caramel apples. And she was
Mhm.
like, man, at some point, like I was having like 2, 3 a week. And I'm like, holy shit, that's if
That's
you
a lot of
want to,
sugar.
yeah, if you want to, great. But oof. So then it became, why don't we just get one for the week? You have one every week, but let's have one for the week, cut it up into slices and like you said, into portion sizes. And then let's have one every day instead of like
Right.
one on Wednesday, one on Saturday, and then one on the following Monday or something like that.
No. No, I love that. It's also teaching you, like, gets you out of the scarcity mindset. I can have this every day.
Right.
It doesn't define my worth. If I want to do the caramel apple every single week in this way, I can enjoy it, and it's wonderful. That this bleeds into, what do we do when we are using food as a reward? And one of the things I tell my clients, I go, you probably, because we work with high achieving professionals, you've probably never sat with just feeling proud of yourself, because you're always looking at what's the next thing to do, because your worth is defined by what you accomplish.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the things we do here is actually have people fucking sit, put their hand on their heart, and say, I'm proud of you.
They really don't like that.
They don't like that.
They do not
But,
like
when we're thinking about the only way I feel good is through food,
yeah,
that's a problem,
right.
right? If your child said the only time I feel good is when I'm eating cookies, you would look at them and be like, what are you talking about? You're wonderful. You're great. Look at all these wonderful things about you. So we need to connect with what we're trying to get out of that food, which is feeling proud. Well, let's take it a level further. Release of oxytocin, dopamine. Oxytocin is more of a bonding chemical, but serotonin, we want to feel that release, when really bonding even with yourself can feel similarly bonding with another person, where that oxytocin of, like, literally putting your hand, I want you to just try it one of these days, put your hand on your heart and say, I'm so proud of you. Like, even saying it right now, like, I just feel like fluttery.
Yeah. We're like, ooh,
Yeah, get it, girl. But yeah, recognizing and feeling the pride. It is not an issue. You can enjoy that for months if you want to. If I look at this company and I am so proud of where we're at right now. And I have all these ideas of doing things moving forward, but I just want to feel proud and
right.
make what we're doing now even stronger.
Not miss the
And
moment.
no, we do it all the time.
Yes.
Or we pop a food in our mouth and think that that's the moment. And
Right.
so that becomes the pattern, when our longing for identity and autonomy and connection, which is the underlying need that needs to be met, still isn't getting met when we
Right.
pop that food in our mouth. So
Well,
good.
and one thing I do want to talk about on this point, it's not to say that like you can't go out and enjoy dessert with your husband celebrating your anniversary or something like that.
Mhm.
Like, what we're literally talking about is when it starts to become more of a habit for a reward as opposed to a circumstance. And what I mean by go
Right.
ahead.
I
Yeah.
was going to say, or like, I was good all day.
Yes. Yeah. Like what I mean, and so what we mean by that, like, I was good all day, therefore I deserve this. I had a shit day at work and I actually hate my job, therefore I deserve this. Those are different than Christina and I are celebrating 5,000 listeners and we're going to go, yeah. And we're going to go get some ice cream that we both love together and kind of have a nice like bonding moment and just kind of chat and enjoy and like feel proud of each other for that.
Mm-hmm.
That's different than, man, like, this episode didn't hit that hard. Like, what are we doing? How can we strategize? And then it keeps happening and happening. And then we're using food as like, okay, let's just go and get ice cream so we can like depress our feelings.
Yeah. Also, did you just ask me on a date?
Why not?
Yay. I want to go to the ice cream place that you always talk about.
No handles. Oh my God. It's so good.
I love ice cream. We had ice cream at my wedding. And again, just, we teach sustainable eating. We don't look at foods as good and bad. We look at them as pleasurable versus nutrient dense. You have foods that are both of those. You have foods that are one of those. You have foods that are neither of those. And eating the most of your diet out of foods that are both pleasurable and nourishing, but also eating pleasurable foods that allow you to go on the date with your partner, eat that dessert that says happy anniversary around it and enjoy that time, but doing it in a way where you don't feel shame, nor you don't feel disgusting in your body. Because we also know that pleasurable foods, if we eat in excess, we can actually feel worse.
Yes.
Especially if you do make changes and you feel how good you feel with nutrient-dense foods, there will be a clear indication. I see it all the time on our check-ins. Like, high fiber, high protein foods make me feel better in my body. And I realize when I have those, fast burning carbohydrates that I don't feel good.
I'll give you an example from Michael so he brought this up last week. So it's ironic that we're talking about this. I had some oatmeal for breakfast last week and I felt like shit the whole day just because it was like my breakfast tends to be higher protein, low carb, but I just wanted some oatmeal, which is going to be higher carb, less protein, but still protein in there. Anyway. So I was telling him like, oh gosh, I need to remember not to have oatmeal for breakfast. Like I just don't feel very good when I do. And he goes, that's one good thing you taught me is I used to have donuts for breakfast. And he goes, but now that I'm working on like having like a protein source for breakfast and then the rest of it, I feel so much better. And he goes, so then when he goes back to Amarillo for work, sometimes he'll like his nutrition kind of goes off the rails, to be completely transparent. He'll get donuts and he's like, and it just ruins the day because I feel like such ass and I'm so sluggish. And he goes, and I would have never realized that had I not changed how I eat breakfast here. And I was like,
yes.
For you,
Yay. Good job. No, definitely. Again, we don't label foods as good versus bad. You have to realize your body's going to use it for energy or it's going to store it for energy. That's what we do. So whether it's the broccoli and you eat broccoli in excess or the candy bar, whatever it is, your body's going to use it. Now, yes, broccoli has more nutrients and vitamins and minerals that allow us to do much more things. And that's why you feel like shit when you eat the Snickers bar. Another thing though is just preparing ahead, right? So if we're on the go and that's your reality. So that's another thing. We're like, well, it was just a crazy week. And then the next week, it's just a crazy week. And then the next week, it was just a crazy week. I'm like, lady,
your week is crazy.
This is your reality.
Yeah.
This is your life. You are here, there, and everywhere. Let's fucking make a plan around it. I literally have a snack bag that we create for clients. Like I had a client whose husband had cancer and we had made like snack bags. And yes, they were almonds, maybe like not like a fruit roll up, like brand, but like a fruit, leather. She would go to Trader Joe's, her and her son would pick them out and they would have these big Ziplocs of their bags for when Dad unfortunately had to go to the hospital because this was a common thing. And I taught her how to plan around that. And then her and her son would grab their bags and then they'd go sit in the hospital. And then it became, they'd grab their bags, they'd eat a little bit here and there. They go walk around the hospital, and this is a really sad time in their life. And they could, I mean, I'm not going to shit you guys. I would allow that to be like, okay, let's have some grace on you, of course. Like, I'm not expecting you to do this, but she also was like, I need to take care of myself. I might be the only person here with my son and I don't want this to fucking happen to him again. So even in this moment, like that's why she started working with me during this time. And it was beautiful. Yeah.
That's what I think. Even going into, this is where we look ahead at restaurants too. So for example, chips and salsa is a big one that we see of clearing and kind of, I know they're so good, and kind of overdoing it and not listening to our hunger fullness cues. So walking in, I know it's hard.
I was to say, I feel like we have you have that other stomach when chips and salsa is involved, but second stomach for dessert.
I know. So it's going in and making sure. So like maybe we are going out and, so for dessert, right? Like if you never have dessert and you're clearing your plate, getting the dessert when you go out to eat, maybe that's a good way to prepare ahead mentally and be like, I'm going to leave 2 bites on my plate for dessert, or I'm going to have chips and salsa, but I'm going to I will slow down how much I have and really think about enjoying the type of salsa as opposed to just dipping and eating.
Yes. Some other things to do is, really just obviously be aware and catch the way you speak about food. I'm now kind of transitioning for like the parents side of things because we hear often, I don't want my kids, even if you're like weighing food on the scale, what do I say to them?
Yeah.
Because that can be, for looking at the old behaviors that can fall into like glorifying health foods, leaving, like not having certain foods. So I tell them when they are using a food scale, it is about like making sure that they're giving their body the right amount of nutrients and that they have a certain amount of nutrients that they need to eat, and showing them that. Now, it's tough because we do support weight loss in this program, but we don't do it in these restrictive ways. So do we have our clients tell their children, I'm in a weight loss phase? No. We just explain, like, I am trying to feed my body so I feel good. And I use the scale kind of like when we bake, we use cups and measuring tools. I do that with my meals as well. And then, being careful between I can't have that, or, oh, I was so bad, I ate all the cookies.
Right.
Or you really need to check yourself around how you speak about food and how the people around you, because remember, it doesn't have to just be you. It frustrates the hell out of my clients when like mother-in-law is the culprit of, telling the kid that they're, oh, look at how chunky you are, mija. It's like, no.
Yeah.
Or me. It's like, mija, you're so skinny. And I'm like,
Okay.
thanks.
Yeah.
But then everyone else was big around me. So then I'm like, oh, look at me. I'm skinny, I would even say too, like, on the run, moms, maybe just take 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Kid might be 5 minutes late, but like, hey, I want you to enjoy this meal. I want to, like, even if for this 5 minutes, like, let's eat this food. Let's be mindful of it. Like, slow down.
Right.
Or plan ahead where we have enough time, even if it's eating in the parking lot.
Yeah.
And then listen to your kids, man. Again, they're, especially littles, they're going to fucking tell you when they're full.
Right.
It's when you tell them that they're not, that they don't trust themselves, they don't trust their bodies. And guess what happens? You keep us in business.
Right. Well, and I would say it's interesting because I would say the reverse can be true for the parent, is your body's telling you I'm hungry and you're telling it you're not.
Right.
Right. And so you're always coming from this place of scarcity. Less is more, less equals weight loss, less equals I'm good. Less carbs equals I'm proud. Yeah. So it's interesting that the kid has I'm full and yours is I'm not hungry. I'm not hungry. I'm not hungry. Right. And so I think when we're talking about bringing awareness to this, and then we gave some examples of the foods and the type of behaviors and things that you can do to challenge yourself, is that to know, as we always say, it's not going to be solved in the one time that you do it. No. Like there's going to be a point where you don't leave the 2 bites on the plate. There's going to be a point where you don't have half the steak and do a check-in with yourself. There is going to be a point where you do go to the party and the Oreos are there and you overdo it. Right. Right. So, but this is where it comes back to, like you're saying, how are you talking to yourself? What kind of practice are you giving yourself? How would you talk to your kid if this was happening? Right. And we need to treat ourselves that same way, because at the end of the day, these behaviors and patterns are coming from that inner childhood experience. And so when we can reframe that and know this isn't an adult thing that I should know automatically because this has been so embedded in my life. It's like, honestly, walking. Like if you had to relearn how to walk in a different way, you learned how to walk from childhood. So it's going to be the same task of you're probably going to walk how you did.
I have an example of this.
Okay, go.
I had adult braces.
Oh,
yeah. So you realize, like, when you're a kid, you can move your teeth easily. It's not as painful. When I had to do that in adulthood, I had real braces. It hurt so bad. However, we got through it, and look it.
Yeah.
Yay. Yay, our teeth. So yes. But no, and I want to just kind of give the parents some other things, like have your kids portion their food based on how they feel.
Yep.
Like stop throwing your own shit on them. Like you need to have one of this, one of this, one of this, depending on how your tummy feels right now. I want you to put the portion on the plate. Now, could they overdo it? Sure. Then we have a conversation about it. Like, okay, it's okay to stop, right? Next time, maybe we put a little bit less on the plate and then you can always add more.
Right.
Like always make it a learning experience. And guess what? Mom, dad, you can do that too. So modeling behavior. Good, good, good.
Some studies now that
Woo! We're
now that we're
brainiacs.
published.
Yes, we're
First
published.
one, I've got determinants of children's eating behavior. So parents have a high, so as we've been harping on, parents have a high degree of control over the environments and experiences of their children, which we know. So parents use a variety of strategies to influence children's eating habits, some of which are counterproductive. I was like, oh, damn. Okay, Science Direct. So over control, restriction, pressure to eat, promise of rewards have negative effects on food. And so the promise of rewards have negative effects on children's food acceptance. And then the parents' food preferences and eating behaviors provide an opportunity to model good eating habits. So like you're saying, maybe we go, oh, I think I'm feeling a little more ground beef tonight for my taco. What about you? Like let the kid kind of determine their own path. And they're like, I don't know, I might want cheese. Ooh, cheese. Okay. And so then what we can do is we want children to essentially, we want the parents to model themselves. And then the children are going to base their behavior off that model. And that goes back to in the other study of people who value high nutrition quality. Remember, they're going to prepare their meals for an unexpected guest more nutrient dense for everybody because of the health and the care. Whereas if you don't care so much, then you're going to prepare a less nutrient dense meal and you're going to feel stressed.
Right. Absolutely.
The other study is influence of parental dietary behaviors and practices on eating habits. So there's a great influence of parental dieting habits on dietary behaviors, regardless of demographic characteristics. So I thought this was interesting.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So such as gender, age, socioeconomic status, and country. So for example, just because, so we can put it like this, and this is not to sound insensitive by any means, but maybe we do have financial insecurity or scarcity in a household growing up. That doesn't mean we have to say, ooh, we're only going to have rice today, right? It could be like, ooh, guess what we've got? Rice today. And it's interesting because in Japan, I forget where I heard this. It was on, you know what I think it was? An interview who did this from this guy who did a big book on Ozempic and whatnot. So he was looking at the different cultures and food and like why Americans are the way they are. And
I need that interview. Excuse you.
It was really good. So he was talking about in Japan, what they do is there's essentially an education process to their food in the classrooms. And so they'll be like, oh, like this carrots are orange. Like, what does orange do for our eyes? And so then the kids are like, it makes us see, so even if we can only afford rice and beans for tonight, we could say, oh, good. Rice provides us energy. And so this also takes a little bit of education, but also make it up. Like your kids don't know. You know what I mean? But rice provides.
We thought spinach made muscles when it came to Popeye.
You can say rice provides us energy, right? Because rice is a carb and carbs technically provide energy. Beans beans are great for fiber. So that helps our tummies. That's it. Right? Yes. We don't have to be like, fuck, we only have rice and beans.
Go ahead.
No.
Well, I was gonna say, I love stories of people who grew up and they just remember the miracle meals that their parents made out of the stuff they had.
Yes.
And it was more just like, for Christmas dinner, my mom made this amazing pasta with hot dogs and, whatever was in there. And they don't remember it not being the Christmas feast that you see on TV.
Yes.
They had this beautiful dinner and they sat together and they lit a candle and they made it what it is. And that is so important.
Well, so much more valuable long term, right?
Yes. Well, speaking of Asian culture, I have a friend. I hope she listens to this. Her and her sisters are all adopted, and they're of Asian descent, and their parents are Caucasian. And the parents used to reward them with broccoli. They're like, "Oh, you're gonna get some broccoli," and they were like, literally, like, "Yeah." Yes. Broccoli, literally. It's like my dog. I'm like, okay, you want a treat? And I give her like some broccoli or a cucumber.
Right.
She fucking loves it. She's like, yeah,
fuck yeah.
Yeah. Sorry.
Well,
funny.
it's like you can manipulate. It's not to say manipulation should be done, but I mean, at some point, it's a kid, right? Or at
Mhm.
some point, maybe that's how we talk to ourselves. Maybe you're listening to this podcast and you're feeling financial insecurity, especially this day and age. And you're like,
Mhm.
well, shit, all I can afford is rice, beans, and maybe some ground beef, right? We've talked about how to have meals on a budget in other episodes. And you
Mhm.
can literally change how your body reacts to that food just by the change in how we're talking about it. So if
Yep.
you're going, fuck, this isn't good enough, like I should be able to have good food, right? Instead of this bad
Mhm.
food, and say, like, honestly, I'm getting some protein, I'm getting some fiber, and I'm getting some carbs, and I'm fortunate that I can have some food, and maybe I have enough for leftovers for lunch tomorrow.
Right.
Um,
Or, you can invest in, so there's like a El Guapo, which is Mexican, it's part of the like Spanish aisle in the
uh-huh.
grocery store. And they have bags of seasoning that are
Oh,
usually
yeah, yeah.
89 cents.
Yeah.
Whereas if you get the thing, because I was looking at getting some chives for this tuna pasta salad I make,
Uh-huh.
and it was like $4.59 for the bottle of chives. And I was like, does El Guapo have them? Because they're usually 89
Yeah, I know
cents.
exactly what you're
So
talking about.
you could add in like taco seasoning one
Uh-huh.
night, and then the other night maybe you add in just some soy sauce,
Uh-huh.
right? And still the soy sauce from the restaurant. Just kidding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something.
Uh,
Well, and then the last part of this influence of parental dietary behaviors and practices, eating habits, is family meals. So we're found to contribute the most. So just like we were talking about, in modeling children's dietary habits, as they represent an important moment of control and interaction between parents and children. So going back to, people just want their basic needs met, right? So the
mhm.
parental practices that influence their children most were role modeling and moderate restriction. And I'm going to say moderate restriction probably like based on like, I feel full, therefore I'm not going to eat. Not so much of like, we don't eat that. Suggesting that the increase of parental encouragement and decrease of excessive pressure can have a positive impact on their child's dietary behaviors.
Right.
So there you go.
Well, and I think of my one client, she's, the whole family is sharing a serving of dessert,
Mm,
which beautiful start, right? Beautiful
yeah.
start. But then in her brain, she's like, I don't want to eat it. It's not, she went all or nothing.
Uh-huh.
And then she goes, no, if I do that, I'm going to think about that dessert and how it should have tasted.
Correct.
Then I'm going to go home and not punish myself, but like reward myself with whatever I have in my pantry and overeat it. Also, my children should see me take a bite of that dessert and enjoy it.
Yes.
So like, again, you're modeling it in yourself. You're modeling it for your children. You're showing your kids, we can share a dessert.
Yeah.
Right. And if you're seeing mommy have one or two bites and talking about like, slow down, make that bite last longer. Like feel it on your tongue. Do you taste it? Like swirl it around in your mouth.
Making it like an experience as opposed to like, oh, like, let's just eat this, like let's make it an experience that is not so much about the dessert, but about the practice of eating a dessert in general.
Yeah. So, gaining this awareness again can bring it into the conscious mind. When we have things in our conscious mind, we can change them. We also can realize that there's not something wrong with you. I just can't seem to keep my hands off the food. I can't just seem to stop eating. That is not true. This is a conditioned response that you've been doing for decades and decades. However, again, being aware of it and then doing some of the things we've offered here can be very helpful. Our program is designed to help people recreate their relationship with food and self-worth and their bodies. And so if you're interested in coaching with us, check out the show notes below for our Clarity Call link. You'll find more information like this, tips like this, as well as other educational information on our Instagrams, Mindset of Matter Coaching and fitbyamanda.az. And if you'd like to see the recording of this, you'll also find all of the reels and everything we have, as well as our recordings on YouTube at The Mindset of Matter. And if you also want to teach your children one of the most important messages they'll ever hear, I want you to teach them this.
What you say in the mind,
you see in the mirror. Goodbye.